Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Cliff podcast, the COVID-19 edition. Jake
Yes,
was
this is the first time that I don't see your lovely face as we're recording, Pete.
I know that social distancing nonsense. We're being responsible human beings.
We're trying. It's the first time in our life we've tried to be responsible human beings.
I know. Well, speaking of responsibility, I mean, you've spent your whole life kind of trying to avoid some of the traditional responsibilities, what with land ownership and all that stuff.
Oh man, yeah, I don't want the government to have my name on anything, man. It's just I don't trust it. I don't want a lease. I don't want a car payment. I don't want loans. I mean, I had some student loans, but that was under my slave name. But yeah, it's I always try to avoid these adult responsibilities.
So are there others in the business like you, or is that just kind of a you hang up?
Yeah, I think it in general, I think all people that are trying to be professional wrestlers avoid a good amount of responsibility, yes. However, not to my extreme. So I think everybody else, say I'm like at a 90 here, like a 90%. A lot of people are probably more like 50 or 60%, but they'll still have like a car payment. They still have their lease. They still have their adulthood. Some people even have families and stuff, which is weird.
So is it just that starting off, the business doesn't pay a ton, or is it a convenience thing, or what's the draw there to being a transient?
I think originally it's the fact that the business just doesn't give you anything. You might wrestle for a few years before you even start getting $20 a show. So you don't have any income coming in. So to even sustain like that for a little bit, you pretty much have to have another job. So wrestling is just your hobby anyway when you're just getting started. So it makes sense that you like wait tables, or it makes sense that you would have a factory job, or it makes sense that you would do something else just to kind of get you by. And then hopefully you get to the point where you can actually make a living doing this. Now, I'm lucky enough where there was a while there where I was kind of making a living doing this, but I also didn't pay like 100% rent, and I don't have a car payment, and I didn't have like loan debt or anything like that. So like it could be done when I was wrestling a ton. Uh, but now that, like, say for instance, this year I haven't been wrestling very much, so I have an actual job, and it's like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, Pete.
Well, for Pete, well, I guess you've sold out by your own standards now,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll have an opportunity to rectify. But are there others that are at that like 90 who just wrestling is all they do and they are, maybe I'll quit saying transient,
hmm
free spirited?
I don't think transient's a derogatory term. It's just like gypsy. I like the term gypsy, but apparently that's offensive, man.
Yeah, only if you are one though.
Yeah, see, they should take it as a compliment that I'm associating my cool self with them. You know?
Right. You're bringing respectability to the gypsies.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about the phrase gypsy is that Tyson Fury goes by the Gypsy King, and I really don't like Tyson Fury. I talked about that on an episode, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't like him at all. Also, by the way, that douchebag might have his win stripped of him because of potentially testing positive for performance enhancing substances. So, big shocker, still a scumbag.
Look, isn't everybody gassed up just a little bit? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you, me, everyone we know, like our significant others, like they're all juiced to the gills. Yeah, but like we're not in performance based sports, Pete. We all just want to look great.
Right. Self-image is important and you got to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, my kitten is clawing at the door right now, and you better believe I have her on performance enhancing kitten food. But like, it's for competitions and stuff. It's not like, I mean, like physique competitions. It's not like she's trying to, run a 4.40.
And this has genuinely nothing to do with anything other than both of my cats are on prescription food and it is the most friggin' stupidly expensive thing. It's
Uh,
ridiculous.
do you think it actually is serving its purpose?
A little bit, but I also mostly think one of my cats is a jerk. We got it to remedy a bladder infection because he was peeing everywhere. Now
Mm,
he still pees places, he just does it
dude,
significantly less.
he's working you. It's not real. He's a worker.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, he's a worker, which goes into part of this episode. But yes, there are other people who live their life a little bit like me. Now, there's one or two professional wrestlers I look up to that are like kind of my heroes because of the way they live life. One of them being M Dog 20, Matt Cross. He was also on Lucha Underground, the Son of Havoc. Like, that's a dude I follow because he's been to like 30 countries now. And he's just this really badass dude who's into good music and wants to travel, and he's a historian. So like I follow him. There's another dude who is a WWE now as Sami Zayn, but he used to be a mass wrestler El Generico, and he just did that too. Like he would show up in countries you didn't even know there was professional wrestling in, or like countries you might not even know existed, and then you're like, oh yeah, well it makes sense that he would be wrestling there because if there was ever a wrestling show in Trinidad and Tobago, like he would be on it. So like those are dudes that I follow, but I don't know them. Like I know Matt some, but like we're not buddies by any means. So there's only one or two people I've met kind of in my travels on my exact level. Like when I was in Japan training originally, there was a dude named Ryan Kidd. He's from San Diego / Tijuana, and we got to be buddies when we were getting tortured in Japan for a month. But then the other most transient person I know is my buddy Greg, Hyperstreak, Greg Sharp. And he got to stay with me for a few days last week, which was fantastic. We got to talk about all of our transient adventures together. But yeah, he's a
Whoa,
dude.
wait a minute. You should have been under quarantine. What do you mean he was staying with you?
This happened right before we went under quarantine, Pete. So
Well, thank God.
legitimately, because he flew. Man, was this was last week? I think maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Anyway, the timeline was he got in town super late on Saturday night because he was like, "Oh, hey man, I'm gonna be in town for like 2 days. If you want to hang out," and I was like, "Huh, if you don't have a place to stay, you're staying with me, jerk." So I went and grabbed him at the airport on it super late on Saturday night, and it was just, I was so happy to see him. There was no passion behind the embrace, but we're two passionate people embracing, and I could see the confusion, but it was kind of a passionate embrace. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't romantic or anything, but it was like just two dudes with like crazy passion embracing. Does that make
That's
sense?
not what people at the airport thought. They definitely thought you were the gay.
Yeah, it probably did look like that. Yeah, and that's a rumor that's been going around about Jake Oman lately. And you know what? I'm okay with that rumor. It's just not factually correct. But so I pick up Greg on late on Saturday night. He had a show on Sunday afternoon, and then he had to fly out late on Monday night. So I pick him up. We hang out. We do some stuff on Sunday during the day. I drop him off at the show because I'm a persona non grata at the show he was working. So I have to go doing other stuff. And then I picked him back up late that night from the sinking ship in B-Rip. And then I dropped him off Monday night at the airport. I dropped him off at 6 p.m. or something. But Monday is when everything started shutting down. So like as the day was going along, I told him, hey man, like if I drop you off at the airport and for some reason your flight back to Las Vegas where he lives doesn't go through, or you're going to be stuck there for hours or wait till the next day, man, like call me. I'll come back down and grab you. But as Monday was going on, legitimately everything around here was shutting down, and there were rumors of airports closing and stuff. So for a minute I thought, man, like apparently Greg is my roommate now.
He's going to have to start paying rent.
Yeah, but you know what? I know the way he lives life and the way I live life, so I would totally try to not make him pay rent. I would have been like, hey man, you know what? I need to pay somebody to do some job at the gym I'm working at or whatever, and been like, you know what? Just save that money because what goes around comes around. Like you take care of me, I'll take care of you. Anyway, I dropped him off the airport at like 6, and he was able to fly out a few hours later and made it back to Vegas. And then the next morning, officially, everything was closed. Man, everything was shut down. But he made it.
He with his I was going to call it a bundle. What the heck is that called? That stick with the bag that hobos have?
Ooh,
Never remember the term.
That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever actually known the name of that bag.
It's like a bundle or something. But anyway, how did your bromance even begin, man? Why are you letting some dude stay with you during a time of epidemiology, epidemiasis?
Yeah, epidemiariasis is a disease, the skin disease. So
eczema?
No, it's different. But anyway, so yeah, I met Greg at this pro wrestling training camp. I want to say 6 years ago. I want to say it was 2014. It could have been 15. So anyway, once a year, I don't know if it will continue to be a thing, but once a year for a long time now, there's been a professional wrestling camp that takes place in Eldon, Missouri, which is the Harley Race training camp, the World League Wrestling camp. And Harley Race is a legendary professional wrestler. Like he's a legendary performer. He's great. He's known as one of the true tough guys in the business. So he opened up his school and training center a long time ago, and Harley has the hookup. So like Harley is, besties with Triple H at WWE, and he has all these strong connections with Japanese companies and stuff. Years ago, he started this camp, and he would always bring WWE representatives in, and he would bring Japanese representatives in from one or two different companies. You go there, you pay $500, you spend a week, 5 days, Monday through Friday, train a couple times a day. You're in front of all these powers that be, and maybe somebody gets picked up to go to WWE, or maybe someone gets picked up to go to Japan. And it was kind of like the unwritten rule that out of the 30 or 40 people, however many were allowed in the camp, someone would get signed to WWE and someone would get signed to a Japanese company for at least a 3-month tour. So,
That's got to be a heck of a way to get a bunch of money from people who want a shot.
dude, yes. And see, you picked that up in about 30 seconds, right?
Right.
Well, it took professional wrestling promoters about 60 seconds, about 40 years ago, to figure out that they could do that to people. So there are a lot of camps like this, Pete, out there in the world, and it's going to be hard to believe, but pretty much none of them are legitimate. They're all bullshit.
Well, but why? Okay, so I understand the appeal. Hey, getting in front of the right people and taking advantage of an opportunity has got to be a big part of getting signed in this kind of industry or a lot of industries.
Mm-hmm.
But why do wrestlers do that to other wrestlers? You're all broke. You're all looking for a shot, and you're all supposed to kind of help one another.
Yeah.
Why are there some that just look to keep screwing over their bros?
Yeah. So, I mean, it all comes down to money. I think, man, I want to say the longer you're in the business, the less scruples you have, or like the more hardened you get. But I don't even think it's that, because there's shady people in the business from day one. However, I guess in any walk of life, there's someone that's willing to capitalize on someone else, right? Like there's
Sure.
someone that's always willing to take advantage I don't even want to say the little guy. Yeah, it's abuse of power, man. It's money. So if you have for this camp, $500 a crack for at least 30 people. I want to say there were 40. But yeah, like that adds up. Like that's a good chunk of change. You're like 15 to 20 grand. And they really don't have to pay out a lot. They probably helped buy 1 or 2 plane tickets from Japan. So maybe like 2 grand, 3 grand. Maybe they put up a few people in hotels for a handful of days. But yeah, so obviously there's a ton of money to be made here.
But I imagine the attendees were paying for their own food and lodging for that week, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like everything else was on you, which is actually another part of the story too. But anyway, yeah, these camps have existed a long time, and we, as fools and I like hopeless professional wrestlers that want to get to Japan one day or go to WWE, like we sign up for these things all the time, even we know like 90% of the time it's a work, which just means it's a fabrication. It's not real. It's a con designed to take our money. We still do it because what if?
Right.
Even if there's a representative from WWE and he's not there to sign a single person, if he sees one person and he's like, oh, that's a dude, we can make money, they'll still try and get that person anyway. So it just comes down to the big what if, man. Like maybe it's me. Maybe that one person sees a thing in me and brings me over with them.
Maybe I should have played D1 football. Then I'd have my contract.
Bro, if I played Division 1 football, I would be living in Orlando right now. I guarantee it. No BS. Yeah. If I could have just said that, like I said a couple weeks ago, if I could go ahead and get eligible to play a year of football at a college, I don't care, D3, D2, the athlete I am now, I have to be qualified to be a D2 player. You know what I mean? Maybe even super low level D1, like not starter. I'm totally not a starter. But
you could make special teams. Come on now.
I could probably make something, because at 33, being the athlete I'm almost 240 pounds now, Pete, and my body fat percentage is like 10 on the dot. Like that's pretty good. So
right,
like I can knock around some 18 to 21-year-old kids. Like even if they've been training for like the last 4 or 5 years really hard, you better believe I'm going to be able to knock a few of them on their ass.
right.
So anyway, but yeah, this camp actually was a lot more reputable than most other camps are, because it's been going on so long. In fact, I remember when I first started wrestling back in the day, I don't remember the year it was. I started in '04, became good friends with some dudes in '04, '05, and two of them, Bam Morgan and Justin Dean, went to the Harley race camp one year, and one or two dudes got to go to Japan, and one or two dudes got to go to WWE. And every year, that's the way it worked. Even there's a big wrestling star now. He went on to be a huge star in Japan, and now he's on AEW. Kenny Omega, he went to one of these camps trying to get to Japan and got a WWE contract, like back in 2006 or
So,
seven or something.
so he had to settle for his consolation. I want Japan. I don't give a shit about WWE.
Dude, yeah, that's exactly what happened. He's like his goal and dream was WWE. Was Japan. He might have been the only dude at the camp who had that goal. And then they're like, "Oh, we'll go ahead and give you a WWE developmental contract." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then
If I have to, I guess.
yeah, and then he went down to this company in the South for like 9 months and didn't like it, and he left. And on the way out, they told him they'd still give him to Japan, and then they totally didn't. But he got there himself. So there were actually like clear results and people that had benefited from this before. But yeah, it totally wasn't the year we went, Pete. Like in fact, the WWE representative they had was a guy named Dr. Tom Pritchard, who's a genius, but I think he'd just gotten released from the WWE like in the last few months. So he had no power. Like he probably could have made a phone call for somebody, but like he was just coming to hang out and teach because he's a great trainer. And then there were two wrestling companies from Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah and New Japan, and I think they were each there for like 1.5 out of the 5 days. Like one of them came out for like half the day Wednesday and then Thursday, and the other one came out for like half the day Thursday and then Friday. So
Jeez.
yeah, it was pretty not cool, bro. And then just to sum it up, at the end of this camp, 0 people went to WWE, 0 people went to Japan, unless you count the students from the school that got to go to Japan like 2 or 3 months later that were totally not involved in the camp. Like they were there hanging out a little bit and they ran a few like spots in the ring. So we pretty much paid for their plane ticket, like two trainees from Harley Race's camp or from Harley Race's school.
Then you went back to the Shark Tank.
Yeah, pretty much. I went back to the Shark Tank with a guy who's never helped me out ever, even once. Apparently, I didn't pay him enough money.
But you met your bro.
But yes, so I did make a couple of good friends there at the Harley Race Camp in Eldon, Missouri, and I want to say I want to say it was an 8-hour drive. It might have been 6. It seemed like a ton back in the day. So I met Greg, and the funny thing was, the first few days we were there, I didn't particularly love Greg because of the way like he did stuff in the ring. He was like making a lot of noise and really animated, like you kind of act in a professional wrestling match, but he was doing it during training. And like sometimes I just like a lot of people just don't like that because you're like, hey man, stop being over the top. Just do the spot, like just do the arm drag.
Just run the drill, man. You don't have to sell it.
Yeah, and usually like the coaches will be like, hey, don't do that. But then again, you never know what might be the thing that gets you noticed. So now I look back and I applaud him for taking the chance, like because you never know. But then on day, I want to say 4 or 5, both the Japanese companies were there, and they were like, all right, everybody go ahead, pick a person, plan out your match. So Greg and I got paired up, and I don't remember how we got paired up, if we picked each other or whatever. And I'd seen him running drills and stuff, and we're about the same height, about 6 foot tall, but he's a lot skinnier than me. Like he's very lean, ripped, and he's very fast. Like his character's super fast. So I was like, man, this would be a good dude for me to work against because I can highlight all of his strengths. I can highlight my strengths. I can like tell the right story. So we had this match, and like I still to this day, out of the 20 matches that happened, think we were the best. Like we definitely did the best match. There were 2 other like kind of big bulky guys who did a match that was okay. And I think a lot of people liked it because they were both like really jacked up, like 6'1", 6'2" dudes that did some more high flying stuff, but it wasn't as smooth as ours. Anyway, beside the point, story for another day. Was I still think Greg and I had the best match, the most impressive match that highlighted us both the most. And like we got a little bit of good feedback from the people. And it was mainly more of like a match to try and impress the Japanese guys because we were 2 dudes who really wanted to go to Japan. And then after that match, like we became buddies, like we joked around the next day or day and a half or whatever. And then like kind of kept in touch. And I was like, hey dude, what's next for you? And he's like, oh man, actually, I think I'm going to end up in New Orleans next. And pretty much he told me he's just planning on living out of a backpack and going legitimately anywhere he can in the States and then around the world. So I was like, oh, hey, man, well, if you end up in Indianapolis for any reason, you just let me know, man. You got a place to crash.
So does he bankroll all this solely by wrestling, or does he have like an online job, or does he just take different gigs where he goes? How does he do it?
Yeah, wherever he is, like he'll work a little bit and save up a little bit of money kind of to get to his destination. And then when he gets to his destination, he just figures it out on the way. So for instance, in Europe, there's a website you can get on where essentially you go do, say, farm work for people for a week or two. They let you stay at their place and they feed you dinner and like maybe give you a few extra bucks, but maybe the trade off is just dinner and a place to stay. So like in Europe, he just did that, or like everywhere you go, they have their equivalent of kind of want ads. Like, what can you do here? Or like, I think he said, in one place he helped teach English for a little bit. So it's like little odds and ends jobs you can get just to kind of get by, which is in a way what I've always done too is like, hey, I work a little while here, save up a couple bucks, then I go somewhere else and I try and make just enough money at wrestling to pay for my trip wherever I go. So it's like, hey, if I can, number one, I'm not going to buy a plane ticket that has a checked bag because that's normally an extra 50 or $100. So it's like I'm going to cram everything to a backpack. If I have enough space for like 5 Jake Omen t-shirts, and like 5 Jake Omen pictures, I'm going to cram that in the backpack. And I'm going to try and sell them and then maybe make $150 that way. And I make $100 at a show. I make $100 at this other show. And then all of a sudden my everything is covered and wrestlers put me up or whatever. So,
But I mean, that works maybe short term, except you've taken extended trips for what your longest is about 6 months or so at one time. Is that right?
mhm. Yeah, in Japan, it was a little different because they actually paid me. Like my job was wrestling and training. So there I could just hang out. I just was expected to train twice a day for a few hours at a time. And while it was grueling, I was still getting paid to train and they paid for a lot of my food and stuff. So that's a little different. When I go places for a month or two, like Europe or whatever, like I still have to, yeah, figure out how I'm going to do it the whole time, but that's still how I do it.
Well, but logistically, how do you fit what you need in a backpack? So let's say you're still using the Omen method. You're
Mm-hmm.
not checking anything. You're living minimal. You've still got boots, you've got gear, you've got clothes that you have to wear
Mm-hmm.
every day.
Yeah.
We could almost do an episode about travel hacks, but I'm just curious how Greg kind of makes that work logistically.
That's funny because when I was talking to somebody recently about trying to come up with stuff to talk about on the show, they're like, how about how you pack and travel? I was like, oh, I think I've already kind of talked about that before, but maybe I haven't, yeah, super gone into depth. But I, yeah, you have to get crafty. Like you have to make the most of what you got. So the last trip I took to Europe, I took a pair of short boots, like boots that I had cut down so they only came over my ankle, so they're the size of like a regular pair of shoes. And then I legitimately like stuff my pads into it as tight as possible, and like my elbow pads or whatever too, and like then tie the shoes legitimately as tight as you can. If you have like some valuable, you can kind of like sneak it in there so it doesn't get broken. And then I just grab a few pairs of clothes that are very versatile. I wear track pants a lot when I travel, which is weird because I never wore them before. But like stuff that's versatile where like it could be kind of a hot weather thing or a cold weather thing. And you might be able to wear it for a week, like a pair of jeans for a week without actually having to wash them. And then I'm like, I kind of in my trip have like in the back of my mind, oh, well, when I get to this location, I'll be with a friend who might have a washer. Or, oh, well, I get to this location and on this day I'll find a laundromat and I'll take an afternoon and go do my laundry. So you do have to get pretty crafty, man, but it can totally be done. It's not as hard as it seems.
Well, apparently not. Not if Greg can do it.
Yeah, and he can do this for like he's done this for months. Like he legitimately just wandered Europe for months, and he was in Southeast Asia for months, and that yeah, he figured it out, dude. This is one of the reasons why he is also one of my heroes because he's taken trips longer than I have and been to more places than I have, and yep, it's just never been an issue.
What's wrong with you, man? What's your problem? Why are you letting some other guy show you up?
I know, man. Is it homesickness? Is it my friends? Is it you?
That must be it. It must be the high caliber of friends that you keep at home.
Yeah, is it significant others? Like I don't know. I kind of like just going for like a month or 6 weeks and then kind of coming back home to reset. I feel like it helps me appreciate where I am more, and it helps me appreciate home more, like just enough where it's I get somewhere and I'm like, man, this is really cool. I love seeing all these things. But it takes a little effort to travel. It takes a lot out of you, especially if you're not holed up in one place for a few weeks at a time. If you're moving, like there's kind of some stress. Like, oh man, I have to hit this train or I have to hit this bus or the only plane ticket I could get that was $5 all the way across Europe is if I somehow get to the airport at 3:30 in the morning and I have to only take this one route and I have to walk 2 miles and then I have to catch this bus that runs a mile, like just to get to the airport on time. Like there's stresses like that where eventually I'm like, man, you know what? I kind of just like to be home and reset where I don't have to worry about anything. And I can go to my favorite like bar. I can go to my favorite coffee shop and just like do nothing. So yeah, he's probably done a little bit better at like finding the happy medium of I can just be here for 4 or 5 weeks at a time in this one specific location over there, and he makes it home, and then just decides to go somewhere else.
Well, I tell you what, because this episode's been not entirely random, but a little bit. Bet
Yeah.
that there's all kinds of vehicle dealerships that are desperate for sales. So if you and I can come up with like 25 grand cash between the two of us, we should buy one of those specked out Mercedes Sprinter vans.
Mm-hmm.
And you're about the only other guy due to your level of care and things, especially
Mm-hmm.
other people's things and cleanliness.
Yeah,
We'll just We'll just travel. I can work remote, man. We'll just take the rest of the pandemic to go travel the US. I'll do it with you. And then you can be like Greg, but living out of a van, which is a touch cooler.
bro, don't threaten me with that good time.
I think the obstacle is the cash because that's quite a bit of money.
I'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out a way where I can still kind of work remote. So right now, side note, this, oh man, this is a little too personal to share. But yeah, so I've been working at this gym, which is closed, but we've had a transition to doing just online workouts for people. Totally the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But like in theory, I could probably record that from wherever I am.
Oh, yeah.
Like I could be like, hey team, I miss you, but I'm in Tallahassee right now and watch me do this workout on a beach.
Wouldn't that be great? A change of scenery would just be tremendous.
Yeah, and we'd have to figure out a way where we could lie and say we're essential travel.
Oh, I think anywhere you could just say, look, man, I'm heading home. Like except our IDs would say where we're from. So we'd have to
Mm-hmm.
try and make it way far east or west and say, nah, I just been working my way home from like Canada or Mexico or whatever.
Ooh, yeah, we were stuck, man. They didn't want to let us over the border.
Right. Had to do what we could just to get out of there.
Yeah, man, they didn't let us cross at Detroit and Windsor, so we had to drive all the way to Niagara Falls.
See, and you would have enough knowledge to make that lie work, to really sell it.
Yeah, like, hey, man, they didn't let us cross at this border, so I'm gonna be honest, we just drove all the way across Ontario, and we had to cross at Niagara Falls.
Bam.
Dude.
We could take some fire Instagram photos and stuff. It last like a 1 month trip would last all of social media for at least 6.
Oh, absolutely. We could still claim to be anywhere. Yeah, while you're somewhere, dude, make sure to take like 50 pictures in every location. So later you can go ahead and just put up a picture that no one's ever seen before of you in Tuscaloosa. And you're like, oh, hey, guess where I am today? Tuscaloosa.
Man, and that is, as a guy who likes to do media stuff, that's what I'm terrible at. I'll go to any event or have any project and I'll look to get 1 or 2 shots because those are the ones I want to use, but I don't take any for just like ancillary posting. That's hella good advice. Take as many photos as you can.
Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if the rental car industry right now is taking a bad hit. So if they've taken a hit, we might be able to rent a van and just wander for a month.
Ooh, that might be cool. I bet you can rent like camper vans.
Oh yeah, totally. I got hired to put on a wrestling show in West Virginia in June. So I was looking into renting vans, like 15 passenger vans. So we can do that like for a relatively cheap amount, probably right now.
That might be dope. The only problem is, well, not really. There's bench seats. We're not so tall we couldn't sprawl out on one of those and catch a few hours sleep.
We can figure it out. We could go to like an Enterprise, I'm sure, and just be like, hey, we both might need to sleep in this for like the next 4 weeks. Let us hop in real quick and see what you got.
This is interesting. This is an interesting concept.
This is totally a story for off the pod, but I'm totally in for this. This would make for some great episodes too. Us on the road, bro.
This is what people talk about when they haven't seen each other for weeks, and this is the only time they get to chat.
Yeah, which normally we're pretty good about not putting that on the podcast.
Right.
We get that all off out like ahead of time. So anyway, we'll get back to that though. But back to the story. Yeah. So to sum it up, yeah. So since I last saw Greg, he's been to 18 countries, man. And since I've last seen him, I've been to 15. So we were trading war stories, and it was one of the few times where I feel like I can trade some stories like, oh yeah, man. Oh, I was in Budapest recently and did this and this and this, and I don't have to feel like a dick because then his next story was, yeah, man, I was in Florence recently and I did this and this and this. And I'm like, ah, bro, cool. You get it. Now I'm not just a dick that monopolized the conversation.
Because you have equally entertaining stories about travel.
Yeah. And I'd ask him, I was like, hey, man, do you ever feel like you monopolize a conversation with people who don't really travel or, whatever, like live as crazy as we do? And he's like, no, I don't think so. And then he thought on it. And a minute later, he's like, oh, shoot, maybe I do. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that feeling. But it's like, hey, man, I'm sorry that you haven't been to, Dublin recently. But I kind of want to talk about it because it's cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, and how can you not? I mean, it's just the same, oh, hey, man, how was work or whatever else? Like, I'm sorry that work took me to Dublin. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah, man, I'm not going to apologize for being famous.
You think Tom Cruise apologizes for being famous?
No, he would never apologize for being famous. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, so we just got to trade all these stories, and he was talking about he worked on a farm in Poland for a few weeks and got to be friends with some people there, and he ended up getting his visa to get into Russia, and he spent like some days just hanging out in Russia, which is at the top of my list. Figured out a way where you can get into Russia for 72 hours without a visa, because believe it or not, it's super hard to get a visa to get into Russia. Like, do you know this?
No. And there's a time frame? Is there an amount of days before you need a visa?
Russia's a place where, as an American, you can't enter without a visa, like ahead of time. There's no travel visa. So you have to essentially hire a travel agency to talk to a Russian travel agency to forge you documents saying that, like, say you're staying at a hotel and a hotel has to prepare a thing that says a letter, it's called a letter of invitation, that they have to say they're inviting you to come stay with them in their hotel. They send that in so you can get like the letter of invitation and the visa to the government, and then they might issue you a visa. So, and you have to have like proof of your travel to and from Russia, like what exact specific days, port of entry and exit, and then like you might get your visa. So like there's a lot for an American to get into Russia. So that's how you technically do it. And that's how he did it. But he was in, I think he was somewhere else, be incorrect. He was in China or Thailand trying to prepare his visa documents. So that made it a little bit harder. But you have to go around about a lot of different ways to get yourself into Russia as an American.
I think Steven Seagal has triple citizenship, and one of the countries is Russia. Maybe he can get you in?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of nuts. How to get that?
I don't even know. Sorry, that was a random thing I just heard.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be curious. I'll look up that later. But there is a way. The only legitimate way that you can get into Russia without a visa for a maximum of 72 hours is if you are in Helsinki, Finland, and you take a ferry over to St. Petersburg. You have to be in and out of the country within 72 hours, which, judging by the only real ferry service you can take, means you could only stay there a maximum of like 48-ish hours or like 60 hours. But you have to be able to get off that boat, do your thing for a day or two, and then get back on that boat and leave to go back to Finland. It's the only way to do it without an actual visa. So
that's super dope.
Yeah, that actually has been a plan of mine for the last few months, because there is a professional wrestling company in St. Petersburg, Russia. And then it's a multiple hour train ride to Moscow. So you'd be pushing it to get there, take the train to Moscow, enjoy Moscow for a day, wrestle, and then fly, and then go back to St. Petersburg via train, and then leave. It could probably be done because there are companies in both cities, and I follow people from both cities, and I have enough friends of friends that might be able to help me get on these shows. These are thoughts, man, but I have to somehow get into Russia to wrestle and then come home.
That would be a tremendous and a terrible trip, because you're never going to get to go there again. Mm-hmm. You're only there for hours. So yes. I think the only workaround is to just sleep as little as you can physically handle and just see whatever the hell you can.
Yes, absolutely. There's been a few places where I was only there for a day or two, and that's kind of what I just did was, what can I do at all of these hours to try and keep moving to take in all I can? Where it's like, I am not going to stop. The last time I traveled, I was in Berlin, but I was only in Berlin for like 8 or 9 hours, something like that. And from the moment I got off my bus, or from the moment I got off my plane until the moment I got on a bus to leave, I was moving. It was like, I only have this amount of hours to safely explore this city. I've taken every single thing I can. So it's like I was moving, 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 and then I passed out on that bus because I was tired. So yeah, I would have to try and stay awake for 2.5 days in St. Petersburg or on the trip to Moscow or whatever, just to really appreciate it, because it's not a cheap ferry.
If there was ever an excuse to start utilizing recreational illegal drugs, it might be something like
Yeah,
that.
Russia has alligator, right? Or crocodile. That's called crocodile. Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
If there's
I
ever
was
a
thinking I was thinking speed or cocaine or something like that. But
man, I don't. Yeah, I don't want to get caught trying to get cocaine into Russia.
no, 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 you get it when you get there, man. I assume there's a lot of cocaine floating around Russia from the movies I've seen.
Yeah, it's probably a little easier to find. Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, if I found it, cool. But if crocodile is all that's readily available, then I'll have to try it. It eats faces. You ever see the pictures?
Yes, it's so disgusting.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, look it up, guys. Crocodile. It's a really sweet Russian like meth. It's really good for you.
Yeah, that's good for you if you don't enjoy the way your face looks.
Yes. Anyway, stories. I love my face. Actually, it's not a good investment, but stories for another day. So yeah, like Greg, yeah, he went to Russia for a few days, right? He had a visa, so he didn't have to rush around like an idiot like I would. Yeah, so he's done all sorts of stuff like that. We got to trade all these awesome, great stories and horror stories, and like talk about like, yeah, man, I slept in this park once. He's like, oh, dude, I slept in this park once. I'm like, oh man, I was in this hostel once. He's like, oh, dude, I was in this hostel once. And yeah, that was our monopolizing the conversations we had with each other. It was great, dude. And apparently his show here was awesome. So hopefully he'll come back to Indy at some point. And I was talking about it. I'm like, hey man, I'll come out to Vegas at some point. And but we agreed when I dropped him off at the airport, like, hey dude, the next time we hang out, it needs to be in a country that neither of us have been to. We're brainstorming because he said we're after I picked him up from the airport on Saturday to come back to my place. He was talking about he didn't have anything planned. I was talking about I didn't have anything planned, and he was like, maybe I'll chill out for a minute. I was like, okay, I get that, dude. And then
How
the
about
next
you guys?
morning, hmm?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Say, how about you guys just go to Cambodia? Just man up. Go there.
You know, like we both could go to Cambodia. He worked for that company before in China, and then my buddy Damon could totally get me to Cambodia. So like we could totally hang out there if we wanted.
You
It's just
should.
not the top of our list.
That's stupid. It should be under Russia. Should be Cambodia.
I can make that happen. It's just not at the top of my list. See, we also talked about how we've never been to Africa and we've never been to South America because those are harder places to get as professional wrestlers. So we have to try and get there. So we're like, hey man, the next time we hang out, it's got to be somewhere we've never been before. And we're like, you know what? It's got to be like South America because there's some wrestling there. There's just not a lot of money in the wrestling there. So we have to figure out a different way to get there. We got to figure out a different way to get on the shows. Did you know Spirit Airlines flies from Indianapolis to Medellin, Colombia?
I did not. My mind was going to like cruise ships because those tickets are going to be real cheap. Maybe just one way cruise down there.
Dude, I'm not opposed to a cruise. Yeah, I haven't looked at. I've never looked at cruise prices honestly because I've never been a cruise guy. I've never had the money to be a cruise guy. But one of the really funny little like facts that's not correct about this whole pandemic is that traveling is cheap right now. It's actually not cheaper at all. It's the same exact price.
So it depends on where you're going. Plane tickets, some places are stupid cheap. Like I think Vegas has gone down because their economy is so based on tourists. But yeah, if you want to fly to Columbus, Ohio, the number of flights that go to Columbus are drastically reduced. So yeah, tickets are the same or more expensive.
Yeah, well, you better believe when I first heard that from some people that were in to the gym I work at, I was like, that's totally not true. But the second that the next class started, I hopped on the computer and was like, I'm going to go ahead and double check. Because on Google Flights, you can just type from Indianapolis to Europe or Indianapolis to Asia. It'll show you every cheap flight to every destination. Like the cheapest ones will just pop up, and you can use flexible dates. So I did that, and I was like, oh, every flight is the exact same price. That's not true at all. I wish it was true. If it was true, you know how many flights I would have booked?
Oh yeah, because it's not like you're booking them for tomorrow. You could book them 6 months from now if you wanted to, if they were
Mm-hmm.
cheap.
Yeah, like I would be, but even then, like there's a little part of me that would be tempted to go, that would fly now. That might be stupid, I'll admit that. But yeah, there's a little part of me that would be tempted to go fly somewhere right now.
Mexico doesn't have COVID. There's a couple other spots that don't have it, like O'Hare. People were flying into and got hung up the first day that Trump declared the travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
So people who came in from Europe and all that, they were in this huge line for hours to get their temperature taken and answer a questionnaire before they got released.
Mm-hmm.
But they came over the PA and said, anyone who's come in from Mexico, go over here, and they just got let out because Mexico
Really?
didn't have the problem. Yeah, so South America could be the same way. Like the virus isn't necessarily everywhere.
Man, yeah. So I've actually been paying a lot of attention to this. I had not heard that Mexico fact. That's super interesting.
Yeah, man.
So I should fly to Colombia right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe hit that Google flight
Oh, man, I'll check in a second. But yeah, if I wanted,
or figure out how long of a drive it is, and we'll explore the van.
oh man, I don't know if I mean, we have to get the insurance because we might not get the van all the way back.
Right. Buy a couple guns too, and just keep those hidden for a rainy day.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, it's like it honestly, I would be all right flying to Europe, to some of the countries that are kind of affected, if it means I just get to hang out with one or two of my friends that are in quarantine. I was talking to my buddy who's in quarantine in Munich right now, and he's like, yeah, it's not like terrible or anything. It just can't do much. I'm like, oh man, I cannot do much in Carmel, Indiana, or I cannot do much in Munich, Germany. Like
One of them's
choices.
way cooler.
Yeah, priorities, man. So yeah, I mean, I was actually going to talk a little bit more about that bullshit camp that Greg and I went to, because there were like one or two kind of funny stories from the camp. But talking about all the rest of this was much better and more exciting than talking about that stupid camp where we didn't get to go to Japan.
My fault, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good because we're getting a lot out that we needed to. So pretty much everyone, if you're listening, the second this starts clearing up, go somewhere cool. Don't worry about too much else. Just go somewhere cool. We'll be fine.
Absolutely. And take photos, a lot of them, for your social medias.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if we end up recording this from the road, then I mean, I'm sure you'll definitely know because there'll be a different quality. But yeah, we'll keep you apprised and try and come up with some bad stories for everyone. Also, yeah, since we are recording from afar, we apologize if there is a little bit of a feedback or a reverb sound on this. We're trying to figure that out. And then also we apologize for being a few days behind because, we didn't expect the world to end.
Yeah, but man, we've given them, I mean, really, our normal shows are 15, 20. We're at 45 plus. So we've hit you with almost 3 episodes of content today.
I think that's a pretty nice thing of us to do in the pandemic when you have some extra time to listen.
Oh, yeah. We got you covered.
One of our loyal listeners, my buddy Matt, actually had said, we have 2 loyal listeners that are both Matt B. So my buddy Matt B, who lives in Muncie, actually, on one of the pictures I posted, I was talking about like no wrestling, no gym, and he was like, more podcast. I was like, oh bro, we're totally working on that. Especially now when we can get this recording from afar thing down. It's like, yeah, we definitely need to be knocking out content for people who don't have a lot to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great time to catch up on stuff like that. For instance, I've blown through like 4 seasons of Entourage in the last week. It's still a great show.
You seem like an Entourage guy.
Oh yeah, man. I can't even say I can relate to their life at all by any means. But yeah, that's why they were a show, right? Because everyone wanted to be like that and they just couldn't, and they loved it.
Right.
By the way, I hate drama so much. He's the worst.
More of a turtle guy.
There's not a single like redeeming factor in Vince's older brother, who's just a douchebag.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, well, I think that sums it up. Yeah, my buddy Greg stayed with me. It was great. He's been a lot of places. I've been a lot of places. He talked about a dude he met recently, though, that had been to like 100 countries, and that made us both feel pathetic. And we're like,
As it should.
We haven't been anywhere yet. So, yeah, when I even posted up a picture like, oh man, he's been this many places, I've been this many places since we hung out 5 years ago, but yet we still haven't been anywhere yet. And he was like, hell yeah, man, 100 countries. So I'm hoping that he and I soon get to hang out in Brazil or something.
Nothing stopping you, man. Just a little bit of disease.
Yeah, just a little bit. All right, so we will be back. Who knows? Maybe even not in a week, given when we might get this posted up. So we hope to give you more content soon. We are at Off the Cliff Pod. Pete is at Multimedia Hustle and Multimedia Muscle. I am at Jake Oman 2012, and we'll catch you next week.